Well, good afternoon. My name is Pastor Chris Young. I am the pastor at St. Paul Community Lutheran Church in Pontiac, Michigan. Just to give you a little bit of history about my background, I went to Lutheran High School Westland, graduated in 2000, then went to Concordia Ann Arbor from 2000 to 2004 with, pardon?
Yeah, that's my alma mater.
Yeah, oh, excellent, yeah. With a major in psychology, minor in Spanish, minor in theology, and minor in education. I taught at Lutheran high schools around the country for 8 years before going to seminary in 2012. Graduated in 2016, taught at 2 more Lutheran high schools, and now I'm at my first parish full-time doing Hispanic ministry. I am fluent in Spanish. I went to Spain in 2001 for a semester and learned my Spanish there. Got my degree in Hispanic language and culture, master's degree from Wayne State University in 2011. I specialize in comparative Romance language linguistics, which kind of puts me for this presentation here, breaking down your devotional roadblocks to the original languages. I taught myself Greek and Hebrew before going to seminary, so the way that I think about language is slightly different than what we were taught at seminary, and I would argue that the way we were taught at seminary is actually one of the worst ways that you can possibly learn a language. So I want to give you some tools today that you will be able to use in order to use your Greek and Hebrew weekly, if not daily, for your devotionals and for your sermons. I had someone ask me today when they saw the title of this presentation, asked me, do you actually read your Greek and Hebrew every week for your sermon? I said yes, because I believe that's what we're supposed to be doing. And always, whenever someone asks me about Greek and Hebrew, the number one roadblock or the biggest complaint about using Greek or Hebrew would be what, do you think?
Okay.
There is never enough time. Time. If we had all of the time in the world, we would all be the best scholars possible. I'm going to try to give you some ways that it can make you better at your languages just by managing your time wisely. If you were to come up with another complaint about why people do not use their Greek and their Hebrew on a daily or weekly basis, what would that be?
Forgot it all.
You forgot it all because it's been so long since you used it. I don't even think that's one of the ones I put up there. But you could say that there's a lack of vocabulary. You just don't remember as much as you used to. You can only remember in Hebrew amar. You know that's supposed to be to speak, but you have no idea how that's supposed to be conjugated because it's so ridiculous. Okay? What I hear a lot from my friends is that they feel like there is just a simple lack of the basic grammar of Greek and Hebrew. I prefer Greek to Hebrew because the grammar for Greek makes more sense in my head, slightly more analytical than the openness of Hebrew, but that is okay, and we can learn both ways. When I was telling one of my best friends that I was giving this presentation, he said, oh, well, I wouldn't go to that presentation. That's why I have commentaries. So I don't have to know my Greek or my Hebrew, and I can have them tell me everything I'm supposed to know. I think you can probably guess how I feel about that comment already. Okay?
I know how I feel.
Right. I'm hoping that we feel the same way. Okay? And then what I hear a lot when I tell people that I know Spanish, I also speak French and Portuguese. I can read Italian, German, Greek, Hebrew, Latin. And they always tell me, well, you're just a language person. That's just how your brain is wired. So that is why you're able to do all of these things. Simple answer is yes, I am a language person. I prefer to spend Saturday mornings looking at French grammar than watching cartoons on the TV. But I don't consider myself a language person. And I think that there are ways that we can work or change the ways that our brains work in order to process language information differently. So we're going to talk about those things today. Okay? We're going to hit on each one of these. And for each one of these different bullet points, I have 2 or 3 specific resources that you can use if you find yourself in one of those 5 camps.
Are you going to be, is this printable or?
I don't have a printout of it. I could send you a print copy if you'd like.
Or is this
could just-
PowerPoint?
It's Keynote. I'm a Mac person, which makes everything
Make it a PDF.
weirder. You know, I can make it a PDF, send it to you, whatever. We can talk afterwards. Okay. So here we go. It's all about your time. And I think that seriously is the number one issue that a lot of people have with Greek and Hebrew. And as much as I am going to rail on the way that seminary teaches us, the one thing that seminary did get right is that it really only takes about 30 minutes a day. If you are able to commit to 30 minutes a day, preferably in the morning, because our brains tend to be sharper in the morning, even if you are a night owl. 30 minutes will actually do the trick to help you out. Hello. The key to the timing issue is that it's going to seem to be mundane to you, and it's going to seem like you are actually taking chunks that are too small to study. So even if you were to only do the first verse of John 1 verse 1, which is, in my opinion, the easiest verse to read in Greek, if you do that one verse one day, and then do verse 2 the next day, and then do verse 3 the next day, even if it's less than 30 minutes, you're still putting in the time and creating the habitus, which is the biggest problem for pastors, is that they're simply lacking the discipline to sit down and do it every day. So even if you take less than 30 minutes and you do 15 minutes, what I used to tell my kids when they were my high school students, when they were trying to tell me that, well, it's impossible for me to study Spanish 30 minutes every day, I would say, okay, well, what do you do at 8 o'clock at night? They're like, well, we always watch TV. I'm like, do you enjoy watching commercials? They're like, no. Well, study your Greek and your Hebrew during those commercials, and now they have Netflix, so they don't have any commercials, right? So you can't necessarily do that anymore. But what the point is that it doesn't have to just be this 8 to 8:30 time slot that you chunk out every day, although I think that's the most helpful. You get more into spiritual disciplines when you talk about chunking out your time after that, okay? The most important thing that you can do is find a book or an audiobook that works for you. So the number one thing that you do in education is learn that people learn differently. So people learn visually, people learn audibly, and people learn kinesthetically, although the latest research says that less people learn kinesthetically than what we were taught in the 80s and the 90s. So chances are you are a visual or audio learner. If you are an audio learner, the best way for you to learn, obviously, is to listen. If you don't have a listening book that tells you what the vocabulary actually is, you're probably not going to learn it. Or it's going to be doubly hard for you to learn that information. If you are familiar with the different resources that are available, logos.com, my favorite Bible website ever, all of their media resources, they have audio books in Greek and Hebrew that you can download, and it will read it to you. If that's the way that you learn best, that's the thing that you need to do. I'm a visual learner, so that will not work for me. I can read a grammar book all day long and be perfectly happy with that. Okay? I understand that that is not the norm for most people. So you need to obviously find whatever is going to work out better for you. So I have the picture right here. And in fact, I brought some books for you to look at. The number one key to managing your time well is that it's most important for you to be underwhelmed at the start. The worst thing that you could possibly do is bite off more than you can chew. Okay? So like I said, in Greek, read John 1 verse 1, 1 verse 2. If you feel like you can handle 3, 4, and 5 the next day, do it. I'm going to tell you, the last verb in verse 5 is going to throw you for a while, so that might take a whole time, okay? In Hebrew, I think sometimes people get confused as to where to start, because if you start with Genesis 1 verse 1, it's actually pretty easy, but the entire chapter 1 of Genesis is actually rather difficult because it uses vocabulary that we don't see all of the time. It is helpful because it repeats itself, so you can kind of get that rhythm into it. But then once you hit chapter 2 and you're talking about mist on the ground and all of this other stuff, it's going to get difficult. So the best thing that you can do if you're more interested in Hebrew is to pick up a narrative. So you are going to want to choose either Ruth, which I do not find to be incredibly helpful because it's only 4 chapters. You can pick up a book like Joshua, which I don't necessarily find incredibly helpful because you get all of these random names like Piloth, Gilazar, and all of these other Canaanite names that may be too difficult for you to figure out. What I have found to be most helpful is the book of Jonah, which is sometimes recommended but sometimes not recommended by professors because the theology of Jonah can be a little bit difficult for us. Because there's only 4 chapters in Jonah, you get through it rather quickly. So the better place to start is actually the Joseph narrative in Genesis, because you're able to see the repetition between Pharaoh and the brothers, and you don't get too much new vocabulary in there. So after you have completed Ruth and Jonah, the Joseph narrative can be the most helpful. I have not found the CPH Hebrew helps to be incredibly helpful. There is a specific commentary that Welch put out on just the grammar of Ruth. And if you analyze that book, it costs you $60 for that book. It's only this thick. It is literally copy and paste from his commentary on the book of Ruth that CPH also put out. So if you are interested in studying Ruth, just buy the Ruth commentary because you're paying just as much for half the stuff. Okay? That's helpful for you to do. So the best way to start is to start with a word or a phrase, even one verse, to start with your little steps. Okay? Number one thing is to avoid being overwhelmed. That second, when you start to feel like, oh my goodness, this is too much, that is when you stop, and start again the next day. You don't need to power through. You don't need to force yourself to go through all of these, what my grandmother would call gyrations, in order to get this stuff done. Start off in small chunks, in manageable pieces of information for you. This is your study. You get to decide what works for you and what does not. And I know that sounds kind of postmodern, but we all are different, and so we are all going to learn in different ways. And we are all going to need different ways of going at these Greek and Hebrew texts. Okay? So, you need to do what is right for you, and you need to do it every day. Unfortunately, in America, we have a tendency to think that more is better. That is not the case when you're learning a new language. That is my favorite thing of high school Spanish, is that I get 40 minutes with the students every day to practice and go over the stuff. In college, now that I'm teaching at Concordia Ann Arbor as an adjunct, I get them for 65 minutes twice a week. It's not enough. They're losing out. They're not as good as my high school students were because they're not doing that Spanish every single day. Okay? So more does not necessarily mean better, but it is better for you to do it every day. So here are some resources for you to use. And I brought some of them for you to look at. This is a book called Treasures, Old and New. It is by John Jeske. He is the author of the People's Commentary on Genesis. He passed away last year. He was actually related to my sister through marriage, so I have to plug his book, right? But you can see in this book, what it does is it breaks it down into a Hebrew verse, a Greek verse, and then he actually puts in one of a verse from the church fathers in here, or the confessions.
Is that something like Light on the Path?
It's like, this one is better than that, but yes, it's similar to that. So I'm going to pass this around for you to look at. He starts off easy, gets a little bit more hard the more you do it. This is something that you can repeat every year and not have to think about, well, which verse am I doing today? How long can I do this? You just do the page and then you put it away for the day. Okay? So that's that. The other two things that I have found to be more helpful than not are Jonathan Klein's books on Greek and Hebrew. I do not like them as much as I like the Jeske one, but Klein actually breaks it off by constituent. And constituent is a linguistic term for nominal phrase or verbal phrase. So he breaks it up into different phrases for you so you can see how it's all kind of strung together in the grammar, which can be really helpful for you if you can't see that just by looking at it. Okay? Do you have any comments, questions, concerns about the time aspect so far? Before we move on to the next one? Is this all information that you knew already? A little bit? Okay. We'll see if we can learn something else so
Can I
far.
offer another resource?
Yes, please.
DailyDoseOfGreek.com and DailyDoseOfHebrew.com.
Oh, I didn't know about those.
Absolutely.
They are
Yeah.
fantastic. They just do, it's a video, and so you see it and you hear it at the same time. They go through the they pronounce it, and they give the grammar, the translation, give you a grammar lesson, one verse a day, 5 days a week, do everything on the weekends. They're pretty fantastic.
And they have an app as well
Yes.
for both of them.
Mm-hmm.
It's out of Southern Baptist Seminary, Rob Plummer and Adam Howe. And every other year they call it a boot camp for Greek and Hebrew that is for free. All you have to do is travel to Louisville, and so I went to the Hebrew one this year, and it was outstanding.
Was it actually a boot camp?
It was a week of reading Hebrew, and you had a test every day, 30 vocab, so you're learning the first, most 300. All right, most commonly
Yeah.
Hebrew, and it helps brush it off. But that daily dose is really outstanding.
I was at this thing in Louisville. I just went to the Friday, Saturday seminar.
Oh, is that right?
Uh-huh, yeah.
So I love that, and I really want to go to that.
I hope they do it again.
Linguistically speaking, humans are only capable of learning 7 words a day. So if you add more than 7, it can be too much for our brains to process. And so we have to be careful, again, with not being too overwhelmed with the amount of words that we're taking in at a time. Okay? So I'm definitely going to look into that and see if I have more vacation day next year. Go to that.
Another resource is Murray Vassar. He's I learned of him through Daily Dose as well. For $20 a year, he will send you a Bible verse a day in Hebrew and Greek, and it'll be 20 questions that you'll have to parse, which gets into the grammar. The difficult thing is that if you learned it from, like one of our Concordias, they're going to use different terminology. It still helps.
Yeah.
So with Daily Dose twice and Murray Vassar, you're doing probably maybe 10 minutes, which, and as they said at the Southern Baptist, this is a lifelong adventure, so just keep at it. And by this time next year, you're gonna learn a little more. You'll be farther down the road, and it's really a lifelong learning exercise.
Amen. Yep. Good. All right. So, I'm going backwards. That's why it's not working. So after time, we've got the use of vocabulary, which is what we're going to talk to next once I'm able to get through all this stuff. And so going off of what you said about the apps, I did not put that in this presentation, but there is 2 apps that actually the LCMS put out for Greek and Hebrew through Andrew Steinman at Concordia in Chicago. Each app is $2.99 on the Apple Store, and it uses the same verbiage that we learned in the Bartelt and the Veltz books. So that might be a good way for you to do that. And it's a simple app, but it works really well because it's so simple. And that's what I really like about it. And you have the option to choose Greek from the New Testament or specifically Greek from Veltz's textbook based off of chapter. So that can really help you parse some things out.
When you say an app, what are you looking at? Readings, or are you looking at?
It's more vocabulary training.
Okay.
Yeah, and
So flashcards on your app.
it's not so much flat. It's more like parsing exercises. So it's not so much flashcards. Although, if you were to recommend that to a seminarian going in through Greek or Hebrew, that would save them a lot of time. Although I'm going to talk about why that's a bad idea in a minute. So. Okay. So, vocabulary problems. This step requires a bit of comparative linguistics, which is my favorite part of the presentation. Okay? It is my favorite part because I differ from a lot of different scholars, a lot of different teachers on how to do this well. Okay? I actually learned from Dr. Gibbs, who is like my favorite person in the entire world. He's the best. He told me that I was dead wrong about this. And so usually it's not a good idea to disagree with Dr. Gibbs, but I respectfully do so in this case because I'm coming at this not from a have to have the perfect Greek translation, but more from an educational standpoint. Okay? So in order to do this well, in order to quote-unquote up your vocabulary, you have to enjoy a little bit of what my English teacher in high school, Mr. Wire, called wordsmithing. And it's where you get to create your own words or see your own meaning in words, which is super fun when you do it correctly. Okay? So for example, if I were to write a dissertation and the seminary would let me use my own methods, I would write it on this one verb, which is parakaleo. Anybody know what parakaleo means? I'll give you a hint. It's the main verb in 2 Corinthians chapter 1, which is console or comfort, depending on which gloss you choose to use. Okay? I do not like either of those translations because I'm going to wordsmith and come up with my own translation. Okay? So, para means to come alongside of or next to, right? And kaleo means to call. So, parakaleo means to call alongside of yourself. A better way to say that is to encourage. So my favorite translation of, I don't like this clicker. My favorite translation of 2 Corinthians chapter 1 is, I encourage you with the encouragement with which I have been encouraged. And I brought that up to Rick Mars when he was writing his presentation or his book on mental health in the Lutheran Church. And he was like, wow, I've never heard this before. we need to start talking about encouragement more. And I was like, yes, we do. This is a thing. Okay? So this is just one example of how you can wordsmith your own words. This works best with compound words, which is what you come up with in the Greek all of the time, right? And you're always like, what does this ecstasy mean? What is this ecstasis, right, that you see? Well, stasis comes from to stand, right? X is out of. You're standing outside of yourself. You're literally not your own person because your consciousness is outside of your normal consciousness. That is what ecstasy means. And that seems really cool to me. That's what I like to do. Okay? So, let's try this with another one, which I can't even pronounce well, because again, I told you I taught myself Greek. I cannot pronounce Greek or Hebrew for the life of me. So, pleonekteo. Okay? Close enough. Okay? So you get these compound words together, and you have pleon, which means more or over, and echo, to have or to hold. Okay? So you are holding on to something more. You are reaching out to grab more than you're supposed to. You're holding on too much. Okay? All of these concepts come with this one verb. So, do any of you know what this verb means in Greek? According to any of the lexicons that you have paid hundreds of dollars for? No? It took me a minute, okay? It means to covet. So what does that mean for us when we're explaining the 9th and 10th commandment to people? When we're trying to understand get inside of the mind of someone who is covetous. When you look at the actual etymology of the word, it tells you straight out. But you have to come at it from your own way, okay? Because they're not going to tell you these personal definitions in the lexicon. But it helps you understand the word a little bit more, okay? So, this is my little key for you. Hopefully this will help you. I hope you don't know this already, okay? Verbs are everything, okay? When I teach Spanish, and I heard that you were in Venezuela, ¿verdad? And do you speak Spanish as well, sir?
No.
No? Okay. Anybody else speak Spanish? Yes? So in Espanol, when you're teaching Spanish, you start out with your basic AR verbs, right? And so you have to conjugate your AR verb. Or did you take another language in high school?
I did take a little bit of Spanish.
Spanish, okay. So, or in French, you start out with ER verbs. This is just how it goes, okay? You always start out with the same verb, amar, which means to love. So you do amo, amas, ama, amamamos, amais, aman. And then you have to do in the preterite, ame, amaste, amo, amamos, amasteis, amaron. And it gets to be like this really mundane thing. But if you're able to recognize the root of the verb, it doesn't matter which conjugation it is, you have to be able to recognize what the root of that verb is. Okay? And then when you get into other nouns that are based off of amar, like amigo, which you normally wouldn't consider to be based off of amar, or amistad, which is also based off of amar, it's not so important that you know exactly what those things mean. It's more important that you're able to locate these nouns and adjectives with the actual verb of amar. Okay? So the same thing that we're going to do, that we did here with Spanish, we're going to do in the Greek. Or Hebrew. It's harder to do with Hebrew, but I'm a lot Like I said, I'm a lot better at Greek than I am at Hebrew, so it's a lot easier for my brain to process the Greek. So the key when you're studying your vocabulary is don't study the nouns. The nouns are going to come to you. The more you read, the nouns will come. The verbs and the conjugations, the parsing, that's the stuff you need to work on. Because that's the stuff that has multiple steps to it. Okay? I would say all statistics are made up, right? So 90% of nouns are based off of a verb. And it may be some Jenga or some Scrabble in order to find out what that verb is, but there are resources that can tell you that, okay? So start with your verbs and work your way toward the nouns. In other words, when you find the verbal root, you will see what the word means, okay? For example, if I didn't tell you that parakaleo meant to call alongside of or to encourage, and I gave you paraklesis, which is paraclete, which is also a bad translation of that word. Sometimes people translate it as comforter, or even worse than comforter, helper, right? What could we use instead of those words? The encourager. I like that. The holy encourager in your faith. Why? Because it's doctrinally sound that everything that the Holy Spirit does points you to Christ. Encourages you in your faith. I like that. That's pretty cool. Okay? Pleoklektes, the coveter or covetousness. Okay? When you're able to see what the verb means, you don't need these definitions for these nouns and adjectives. Okay?
It's really wild that is in such stark contrast to
Right, exactly. But in order to make that is the type of connection that is incredibly helpful, way more so than trying to make flashcards of what these words mean, right? And that's when you come up with these connections and these wordsmithing ideas organically, they stick with you because it was your idea. And everyone's going to come at it from a different angle, and that's okay because, I don't know, maybe you need that for a sermon, and the person next to you doesn't. You know what I mean? Right. Usually that's the case. So that's why I find this stuff to be super fun. Okay? Okay, resources for vocabulary and comparative linguistics. I have unfortunately spent probably $2,000 on resources trying to find the best one. The best one does not exist. At least I have not found it yet. I would love to write my own. It's probably not going to happen. Okay? So, the ones that I have found so far, if you have Logos, it's called NASB dictionaries. I don't know what that stands for. I'm sure it's New American Standard Bible or something like that. Okay?
That was big when I was a kid.
Oh, cheers. Yeah. So there is one by Thomas that actually takes all of Strong's words and he parses them out by verbs, which is helpful. Strong's Concise Dictionary, not the big one, but the Concise Dictionary of Bible Words, is this picture. It should have a red cover on it, okay? That one does the same thing. I have found the Concise Dictionary to be slightly more helpful. However, the NASB dictionaries on Logos has more words in it. Okay, so you have to kind of figure out which one you would prefer. Okay?
Do you have to have Logos to get on it?
I looked this one up on Amazon and I could not find it. So I think this one may only be on Logos. I'm not 100%. Okay, this one I was able to find on Amazon.
Do you use Logos?
I use Logos every single day for literally everything I do. Like I am on my computer, on my iPad. I use it all the time.
Which version do you have?
Of 9 or whatever the newest
Oh, I
one
guess
is.
7. Never mind, I'll let you that.
Oh, yeah. I originally bought the original languages package that they no longer offer anymore.
Oh.
Yeah. So the other two that I really like is by Van Voorst and Landis, Building Your Greek Vocabulary, Building Your Hebrew Vocabulary. These are super cheap books. I think they're like $10 each or something on Amazon. And what it does is it breaks up the words and puts them in verbal root groups. So it'll give you the most basic form of that word and give you all of the different words in the Old Testament, or in the Old Testament if you get the Hebrew one, that are based off of that word. So you're able to see the entire language family with that word in one book. Because most of the time we've never seen it like that. Veltz and Bartelt don't present it in that way. Okay? Doing time pretty good? Grammar probs, hashtag grammar probs.
Go back one
Yeah,
page.
no problem.
Real quick. Let me see what's.
Everyone's got their grammar probs. And I can help you find any of these books online after the session, okay? My pleasure. That's why I'm here. Okay, so we've got Veltz's Fundamental Greek Grammar. I hope none of you are best friends with Veltz because I am not a fan of the way that he has made his book. And I told him that, and he still gave me an A in his class, so it's okay. The grammar problems are the hardest to fix because it really is all about the rules. And if you don't know the rules, you're not going to figure out the grammar. So that is the biggest concern that I hear from people when they tell me, there is no way I could ever read Greek. It is too confusing why they put the words in one place and the other place. And I'm telling you, if literally you only have to know nominative, genitive, accusative, dative, it's really not that hard. But if it is hard for you, that's okay. The grammar will fix itself once you get your verbal roots down. Okay? So unfortunately, to handle your grammar problems, you need to take a more inductive approach to it and simply immerse yourself in the knowledge. Okay? Unless you enjoy reading grammars, which I have plenty to give you. Okay? But it is probably going to be more helpful for you to read some more, and reread what you already read to simply get it. And I think that's what the boot camp does, right? It immerses you.
Yeah, it's just, it presupposes you already have had the Hebrew, and the Greek. So it's getting you into it once again.
Yeah.
To dedicate a week, so you can, you brush off the rust.
Right.
All right?
Yep.
And so you have a little bit more, how do I put this, confidence going in.
It's all about the confidence.
And
Yep.
that's what it's about.
And it's not making you into a pearl of wisdom.
No.
It simply is getting the rust off,
Yes.
which is
Knocking
helpful.
the rust off.
Right. And maybe putting some oil on the gear.
Absolutely.
Yeah, for sure. Yep. So read, and just reread it. Okay, so like I told you, my best friend Aaron Rickert, he is down teaching at Lutheran High School South in Houston, Texas. And so I told him that I was giving this presentation, and when the COVID pandemic happened, we had all this time on our hands because everything shut down, right? So I called Aaron. I said, hey, like, what would you think about just reading the Greek together? Like, because I'm probably not going to be good enough to do it by myself, and by good enough I mean like disciplined enough because of the pandemic. I was like, but if you were to keep me accountable, I could keep you accountable, we could probably do this thing. So we sit down to read what? John chapter 1, because it's the easiest. We spent 3 hours on the first 5 verses, which is way too much. Way overwhelmed. Because Aaron is sitting there, and as any good Lutheran has been trained by Veltz or Bartelt, well, he actually went to Fort Wayne, so he had a different teacher. But he was like, well, what is this accusative actually doing? How am I supposed to take this? Is this an exegetical accusative? Or is this a what? I said, Aaron, put away Wallace. It's not helpful. Just read the text. And he said, it's literally the only way I've ever been taught to do it. And that is super unfortunate. And it's literally goes against every possible way that any educator would tell you to learn another language. And then he said, I just find this exhausting, which is why I never do it. When I was in seminary, first year, like I told you, I taught myself Greek. I could tell what a nominative was. I could tell you what a genitive did. But all of a sudden, in my first Greek readings class, we're reading Colossians, something whatever. And my professor is standing up there and says, Chris, what is the purpose of this genitive? I was like, I don't know. It's the genitive form. It comes after the nominative. That's what it's the order of things. And he's like, no. And it was some whatever, like I couldn't tell. So basically, he wanted me to memorize Wallace. And if you don't know what Wallace is, you don't need to know what Wallace is. Okay? Wallace is so unhelpful because he's trying to categorize everything and make everything make sense. But guess what? Sometimes language doesn't make sense. It just is what it is. And you have to accept that. So with grammar problems, it tends to get a bit exhausting. And usually when it is exhausting, it's because you are using the wrong grammar resources. So here you go. Never open Wallace. Throw it out. You don't need it. Unless you're reading a Concordia commentary. Because all of the professors use Wallace to get their stuff done, which is fine. They're allowed. If I were writing a commentary, I would use it too. And that's why no one's asked me to write a commentary yet. Okay? Skip the critical apparatus. Apparati, apparandi, whatever you want to call it. It's not helpful unless you're super awesome at it, like Chloe. You don't need it. Okay? Simply look at the text. Get a large print, which costs more money, but it's better on your eyes, and none of us are getting any younger.
Or use electronic software.
Or use electronic software like I do that busts that open. Get your 25 print up there, because that's what I'm using, okay? Again, all statistics are made up. 90% of seminaries that aren't Concordia use Mounts as their Greek textbook. Use Mounts. It's better. He does it systematically and in a way that is actually educational. It's helpful. And what I like about Mounts and Practico for the Hebrew is that they have so many resources attached to their book. They have workbooks. They have audiobooks. They have they have vocabulary books that just go through the vocabulary for the chapter, and it's all integrated. It's amazing. But no, we use the one where you have to look at 2G on page 15 to figure out which vocab thing is. It doesn't make any sense to me. Okay? Ooh. What I actually like for a Hebrew grammar is Green. And this is like old school. This is like 1920s.
I hated wine green.
Okay, right? So I love this because I know how to read grammar books. right? This is a grammar book's grammarian way of reading Hebrew. Super, way more helpful to me than Bartelt. Okay? So I'll pass this around. You can look at it if you want. I have highlighted some things. Maybe you remember it, if that's what you're looking
I
for.
remember that.
Was that,
I didn't like it.
why not?
It was too hard to find when I had questions and I wanted to find out something, I had to dig.
You have to dig through the text. Yeah.
Confusing.
Yeah.
It had an awful lot of exercises with Hebrew right there.
Yeah.
You know, but it seemed to me like that would be more along the lines of, belts or.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or,
And it's so funny that you guys are pushing back on this, because I debated whether or not I should put it in the presentation or not. Like that was the one thing that I was like, I kind of want to, but like maybe they won't. So I totally understand if you don't like that
I
textbook.
use Machen for Greek.
That one too. Machen's really, really good.
That
Yep.
was in 1978.
Yep. No. That I think, and I'm not 100% sure on this. I think Mouse might have worked with him
Okay.
in making his own grammar. But I've seen the Machen, not Machen, it's Machen. I've seen the Machen one before, but seminaries don't use it anymore. Seminaries are using Mounts. So that's why I like it, because all of the resources are integrated with it. And then you can also look at linguistics for students of New Testament Greek. That one gets more into the linguistics aspect of it, which may not be helpful if you don't know. For someone who knows linguistics, that kind of opened my mind. That was the one. This is the book that I wanted seminary to teach, but actually didn't. It's probably my mom asking me how the presentation went. All right, the commentary problem. I'm going to have less to say on this than you probably want me to, because the commentary problem is a personal problem, and I can't help you with it. If you choose to not do your Hebrew and your Greek because you have commentaries that are going to teach you everything you need to know, then for the rest of your life, the commentaries will teach you all that you need to know. And especially if you are choosing to only use Concordia commentaries for your commentaries, I'm going to tell you, you are going to be out of luck sooner than you expect. Why is that? Because the Genesis one has been delayed for 7 years already. It's a long time. Why are you going to wait for someone else to tell you about Genesis? Like that, you're going to wait to read a book of the Bible? That doesn't make any sense to me. Okay? So, yes, it is true. You have commentaries that can save you time. Yes, commentaries can be helpful because you're standing on the shoulders of giants. Yes, it is true that you probably have larger concerns than studying Greek and Hebrew and you're using commentaries as a quick fix. Yes, sometimes commentaries are just simply splitting hairs that may not be helpful for you for that particular sermon. They are all excuses. That's all I have to say about it. We are grown adults, grown men and women, and if you cannot tell when you're using an excuse, I am not able to help you with that.
I can tell you what my drill instructor said about excuses.
What? Here's the problem with commentaries. People make mistakes. They're human. They may not be right. You may not be right. But you may have what you need doing wordsmithing more than someone who wrote a commentary will.
I find commentary is a lot more helpful if I'm teaching a Bible class than I do for anything else. Whatever commentary that I pick up, I have to assume that I'm not just going to get the text, I'm going to get the back of the commentary.
Oh, 1,000%. Yep. When I submitted this session to Best Ministry, I debated between this and how to write a decent Bible study. So I think next year I'm going to do how to write a decent Bible study, because if you give me clip art from 1970s, I'm going to throw the sheet back at you, which is what I have a tendency to get when I go to other churches. So, sola, pardon?
I don't get it.
I-
What you just said. I'm
Are you-
not making a connection here.
So if you have fancy pictures of a person like showing you what the information is, or you're using this fancy text script that you think makes it look a lot better, it doesn't. Like, you're just hiding what you are not
Real
saying.
14-pitch type, that's what our congregation.
That's right.
That's
That's better. So thank you for that. That's good. Okay, so sola scriptura. You say, well, I'm not a linguist. Please help. There's no way that I can possibly do this. And I'm going to tell you the same thing that I was told in my first seminary class at Concordia St. Louis. If you are a theologian, like everyone is a theologian, you are a linguist because you use language. So you can actually do this. The end. Resources to help bring out your inner linguist. How biblical languages work. Right here, you can look at this after class. And God, Language, and Scripture by Silva, which you can look at after class. This is what I have to say about these. These are essentially too technical. If you do not know about linguistics, even though these books were made to help you understand linguistics, if you don't know what your alveolar is in your mouth, if you do not understand what a dental consonant is, these books are going to be too technical for you. Okay? So here is my answer to help make you a linguist. Do it yourself. You don't need a book to tell you what to do. If you graduated seminary, you are able to do these things. This is what I have found to be the most helpful. Okay? We have, and I did not know this until a year ago, we have ESV journaling Bibles that you can buy individually by book. And this is not, and please don't take this the wrong way, this is not Connie Denninger, Pat Meyer journaling Bibles where you need to color in your faith, okay? These are the Bibles that have the text on one side, and well, I mean these are as cheap as you can get. These are $5 a piece. Okay? So what I do for my Bible studies, I buy everyone one of these. Because we only have 20 people in our congregation, so I can do that. Okay? So you can pass that around and look at that. You can buy one for each one of the books of the Bible. Super, super helpful. I do this for our the men's Bible study that I lead on Daniel. We're going through that this year. There's like 10 guys in it. Only 3 of them use this. I don't care. That's 3 more people writing in their Bible than there was a year ago at this time.
So where do you get these? Amazon, or is it
I am glad you asked.
Crossway?
It's Crossway.
Crossway,
Yeah,
okay.
it's Crossway. But I don't recommend buying them from Crossway because they make you go through all the hoops. Okay? So you can be your own linguist. This is about your own reading. So you can find them on Amazon. If you find them on Amazon, they're going to be more expensive, but you're going to get free shipping. So if you're only getting one, do it on Amazon. If you're going to buy groups of these, more than 10, buy them on christianbook.com because they have a sale every other day. and they're usually 50% off. Okay? And then you're charged an arm and a leg for shipping, but if you're paying only $3 a piece instead of $8 a piece, you're still saving yourself money. Okay? So what I like even more than those is that you can actually buy an entire set of the New Testament in Greek, and you can make your own journaling Bible out of Greek, which is super, super helpful. Why? Because you're not relying on any interlinears, which are actually super unhelpful if you use them. Okay? This way you can make your own wordsmithing, and you can write in the things that you need to know about your grammar that maybe other people won't need to know. And you can actually teach yourself using these techniques. Okay? So you can pass that around, and I think I've even marked in that one. I think that's the one that I use for the Greek Bible study that I go to every week.
Isn't the reader's edition of Studia Artensia interlinear?
I'm going to show it to you. I'm glad you asked. So I was going to let people look at that first. But if you would like to know more about reader Bibles, readers have been used for thousands of years to teach students different languages. And maybe if you took Spanish in high school or German in high school, you had a reader book in your Spanish or German 3 class that you read, and it was about this boy who played with a ball in the woods, and then they went and did this thing, and it was really, really great. And it goes dun 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 dun, dun, and they're super boring. I hate them. Okay. However, with Greek and Hebrew, what we've done now, because publishing is so much different with the internets, is that they actually take the text and they pick out all the hard words, and then they give you a legend down at the bottom that tells you what all the hard words are, so that you don't have to have every single little word done for you, but you can kind of figure it out for yourself. So, an example of this is I gave you what I'm going to teach next semester, Psalms.
Where do you purchase this at? Through a Christian book?
You can that one you can do Christian book. It's the whole set though. You can't buy the Greek ones individually.
Okay.
So the whole New Testament set I think is $100. Totally worth it. It's the best Greek resource that I've found.
And what's that called again?
Just journaling, Greek journaling.
Yeah, if you write Greek Journaling Bible up here, if you just replace the ESV with Greek, you'll find it on Christian books. I think they have it on Amazon, the whole set, but it's like double the price. So if you're going to buy the Greek one, I would go to Christian book and wait until they have a sale, because I think you might even be able to get it for $70. Okay? And I find those super helpful to do for sermons, right? Like you're going to do a year on Luke this year. Just do that, right? And you can find all of these words that keep on popping up, and you're going to be able to connect your different sermons, which is hopefully what we all want to do in the first place. Okay? So what I really like about this Psalms is that, again, I'm awful at Hebrew, not really good at it. So I have it all, and I blew it up for you. This is not actual size. This is 125%. Okay? So this is what the book looks like. And you can literally write this down in Amazon, or I bought this on Christian Book. This was only $20 for the entire Old Testament. It's an amazing price. It's thick, but it's good. And if you want to be all super fancy, I bought like the leather edition. So it's like $50 instead. That's fine. Okay? If you need to do whatever you need to do to get into the Bible. Okay? So what I really like about this Psalms is that it has Psalm 1, and then you can see down at the bottom your legend of Psalm 1. And this particular reader is a little bit harder to master, but once you master it, it's way better than all the other ones. It's hard to master because they have all of these numbers next to the Hebrew words and the definition, each one of those numbers has a specific thing in the legend that tells you exactly if it's a verbal noun or if it's the hopeful or if it's whatever tense it's in. Okay, so I haven't memorized that yet, but every book comes with the legend so that you're able to have it and use it right away. Okay? Thank you. The other thing I wanted to say, just because you guys brought it up, is that flashcards are not the way to learn another language. They're actually one of the worst ways to learn a language, even though that's what every language teacher tells you to do. I still tell my students to make flashcards because sometimes there's no better way to do it. But the best way to do flashcards is not to do a one-to-one comparison. So let me explain that. When you're doing a flashcard and you were to use the verb amar, which is to love, on one side of the flashcard you write amar. And then on the next side, instead of putting the English in, you want to put a picture in. Okay? So I would draw a little heart. Or whatever means love to you, that's what you should put on the other side of the flashcard. Because if I were to write love, and you have to switch back and forth, that's what linguists call code switching. And you're actually making your brain work doubly hard for the feedback that it's getting back. Okay? So there's nothing wrong with doing flashcards as long as you always do a picture. And sometimes when you're doing a picture, that makes it that much harder for you to make the picture, because how do you make a picture of tabernacle? Right? It may take you a minute to find one if you're doing online flashcards, or if you're drawing your own flashcards. I am not an artist, but it might take you a minute to make tabernacle. And that's okay. And whatever you draw, you're going to remember it better because you did it. And that's the way that our brains work. So please, 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 if you ever make flashcards, never code switch. Because it's not going to, you're going to do double the work for half the payback. Okay? That's just Language Methods 101. Do you have anything you'd like to add since you're getting a doctorate in this?
I could add a lot, but we'd be doing well.
Okay. Well, we should talk after. Yes, yes, yes. Okay?
I have a question, but it's something very particular, so if
Okay.
somebody else has a question.
Yeah. Comments, questions, concerns. What do you got?
One thing they, at this Hebrew boot camp that they're coming up with through Glossa House are Hebrew readers that are pictures. They're picture books with the Hebrew underneath